A waitress says to the billionaire, "Hi, sir. My mother has a birthmark just like yours." But what he discovered next left the entire room speechless and, subscribe now or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The Sunset Diner smelled like burnt coffee and yesterday's grease, a scent Bianca Esteban had learned to ignore after 3 years of wiping down the same cracked vinyl booths. At 27, she'd perfected the art of invisibility, moving between tables with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that being noticed rarely ended well. Until Adrian Knight walked through the door. He didn't walk. He stormed in, jaw tight, phone pressed to his ear, trailing an elderly woman who struggled to keep pace. Bianca recognized him immediately. Everyone in New Jersey knew the CEO of Knight Labs Genetics. His face had been on the cover of Forbes last month, discussing breakthrough gene therapies that would cost more than her annual salary. "Table for two, now." His voice cut through the diner's chatter like ice. Bianca grabbed 2 menus, her movements automatic. "Right this way, sir." He barely glanced at her, too busy scanning the parking lot through the frost-covered windows. Paparazzi, probably. The rich always seemed to be running from something. Coffee, black, fast. He slid into the booth, his expensive suit looking absurdly out of place against the worn red vinyl. The elderly woman beside him smiled apologetically. Her hands moved in graceful gestures, sign language. "Thank you for your patience." Bianca's hands responded before her brain could stop them. "Of course. Take your time." The woman's face lit up with surprised delight. Behind the counter, Maria Esteban swayed slightly, gripping the edge for balance. Bianca's heart clenched. Her mother had been getting worse lately, dizzy spells, confusion. The kind of symptoms they couldn't afford to investigate properly. "Mom?" Bianca started toward her. The elderly woman noticed first. She stood, concern creasing her features, and moved to help Maria. As she guided her to a chair, Maria's worn cardigan slipped from her shoulder, revealing the birthmark, 3 small marks forming a distinctive triangle, like a constellation burned into her skin. The elderly woman froze. Her eyes widened, and she looked from Maria to Adrian with an expression Bianca couldn't quite read. Shock? Recognition? "That's impossible," the woman breathed. Adrian looked up sharply. "What is?" Bianca's pulse quickened as she helped her mother settle into the chair. "She just needs to sit. Low blood sugar, probably." But the elderly woman was staring at the birthmark as if she'd seen a ghost. Margaret had one exactly like that. Exactly. The name hit Bianca like cold water. Margaret Knight, Adrian's mother. Dead for over a decade. "What a coincidence," Bianca said without thinking, her voice steadier than she felt. "My mother has the same birthmark as your family." The words dropped into sudden silence. Adrian's gaze snapped to her, then to Maria, his steel-gray eyes narrowing with something between suspicion and calculation. The casual arrogance vanished, replaced by razor-sharp focus that made Bianca's stomach drop. "What did you say?" The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. A fork clinked against a plate somewhere, painfully loud. Bianca felt the weight of 2 worlds colliding, his gleaming Manhattan Tower and her chipped countertop, and suddenly regretted ever opening her mouth. "Nothing. It's nothing." She tried to smile, but her hands were trembling. Maria's eyes fluttered closed. Her breathing turned shallow. "Mom!" Bianca caught her as she slumped forward, panic surging through her veins. "Someone call 911. Adrian stood, his voice cutting through the chaos with corporate authority. "This place isn't equipped for medical emergencies. The ventilation alone is a health code violation." "Then maybe you should leave," Bianca snapped, cradling her mother's head. Fury and fear tangled inside her chest. Not everyone was born with the privilege to demand perfection. His eyes flashed. For a moment, she thought he might argue, but then the ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. As paramedics rushed in, Bianca caught Adrian watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not anger, not pity. Something closer to curiosity, the way someone might study a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit where it should. The elderly woman touched his arm, whispering something urgent. He nodded slowly, never looking away from Bianca. At the hospital 3 hours later, exhausted and still wearing her coffee-stained uniform, Bianca finally allowed herself to breathe. Maria was stable. The doctor said dehydration and stress. Nothing immediately life-threatening. She was filling out paperwork when she felt him before she saw him. Adrian Knight, standing in the corridor like he owned the place. which, given his wealth, he probably could. But it was the man beside him that made her blood run cold. Dr. Lionel Graves. Her past, standing in a white coat, wearing the same cold smile that had destroyed her life 5 years ago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the hospital corridor. Bianca stood frozen outside her mother's room, watching Maria sleep through the small window in the door. Peaceful, unaware of the storm gathering. Adrian Knight approached with measured steps, his earlier irritation replaced by something more dangerous, calculated interest. "Your mother is stable?" His voice was polite, professional, empty. "Yes." Bianca didn't look at him. Couldn't. "Good." He paused, and she felt his gaze like a physical weight. "That birthmark, you said it matched my family's." Her throat tightened. "I was mistaken." "Were you?" He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made her hyper-aware of her own exhaustion. "My mother, Margaret Knight, had an identical mark. 3 points. Same position. She died when I was 19. Bianca's heart hammered. This was exactly what she'd feared. Attention, questions, the slow unraveling of secrets that should have stayed buried. "I'm sorry for your loss, but it's just a coincidence." I don't believe in coincidences. Neither did she. Not anymore. The click of expensive shoes on linoleum made her spine stiffen. Dr. Lionel Graves strode toward them, his face arranged in professional concern that didn't reach his eyes. When those eyes landed on Bianca, something flickered, recognition, calculation, and beneath it all, a flash of pure venom. He paled, just for a second. "Mr. Knight." Graves recovered smoothly, extending his hand. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Dr. Graves." Adrian's handshake was brief. "Small world." "Indeed." Graves turned to Bianca, his smile sharpening. "Miss Esteban." The name felt like a confession. She watched realization dawn in his expression, quickly masked. 5 years. 5 years since he'd systematically destroyed her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked for. 5 years since he'd looked her in the eye and told her she'd never work in genetics again. And now here he was, standing next to the one man who could make things infinitely worse. "Ah." Graves' voice dropped, intimate and poisonous. He leaned toward Adrian, just loud enough for Bianca to hear. "A word of caution, Mr. Knight. This young woman is problematic. She has a history of making unfounded accusations. Destroyed several careers with her conspiracy theories." Bianca's breath caught. The lie was delivered so smoothly, so convincingly. Adrian's gaze shifted between them, assessing. "Is that so?" "I'm afraid it is." Graves sighed, the picture of reluctant truth-telling. 5 years ago, she worked briefly as a research assistant. Made some serious allegations about data manipulation. All proven false, of course, but the damage to our team's reputation was significant. "That's not," Bianca started, but her voice cracked. "How did you fight someone who'd already written your story, who'd spent years planting seeds of doubt in every professional circle that mattered?" Graves continued, relentless. "I'd be careful, Mr. Knight. People like her, they see wealthy individuals as opportunities." The birthmark comment, the dramatic collapse. He spread his hands apologetically. "I've seen this pattern before." Adrian's expression remained unreadable, but something shifted in his posture. A slight withdrawal, the beginnings of doubt. Bianca felt the walls closing in, exactly like they had 5 years ago. The same helpless rage, the same suffocating certainty that no one would believe her. Inside the room, Maria stirred, her eyes opening with sudden urgency. "Bianca." Bianca pushed past both men, desperate to reach her mother. "Mom, I'm here." Maria gripped her hand with surprising strength, her voice barely a whisper. "The truth. You have to tell him the truth about the birth. Mrs. Esteban needs rest." Graves appeared in the doorway, his tone brooking no argument. "I'm ordering a full neurological workup. We'll need to keep her overnight, perhaps longer." "She doesn't need," Bianca began. "Are you a doctor, Miss Esteban?" Graves's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, that's right. You're not. You're a waitress." The word landed like a slap. Adrian watched from the corridor, his earlier curiosity hardening into something colder. She could see it happening. Graves's poison taking root, transforming her from victim to threat in the span of a conversation. "I'll leave you to your family," Adrian said finally, his tone dismissive. "Dr. Graves?" A moment. They walked away together, heads bent in quiet conversation. Bianca caught fragments, unstable. attention-seeking, previous incidents. She sank into the chair beside her mother's bed, fighting the urge to scream. This was happening again. The same trap, the same villain, the same ending where she lost everything. Except this time she had more to lose. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. Don't let him win. Not again. Through the window, Bianca watched Adrian and Graves disappear around the corner. She thought of the old safe at home, hidden in her closet. The documents inside. Proof of everything Graves had done, everything he'd buried. She'd been too afraid to use them 5 years ago. Too alone. But as she sat in that sterile room, watching her mother fight for consciousness while her past destroyed her present, Bianca felt something shift inside her chest. Fear, yes. But beneath it, something harder. Determination. The past had found her. Fine. This time, she wouldn't run. Graves moved fast. By morning, Bianca's name was poison at St. Catherine's Hospital. She felt it the moment she returned, conversations stopping when she approached, nurses avoiding eye contact. Excuse me. She caught a young nurse near the medication station. My mother's discharge paperwork? The nurse's expression shuddered. You'll need Dr. Graves's authorization. But she's stable. There are concerns about irregularities. The nurse glanced around, lowering her voice. Someone tried to access restricted files last night. The IP trace led to your mother's room. Bianca's stomach dropped. That's impossible. I was with her all night. The logs don't lie. The nurse's sympathy evaporated. And there are other concerns. About targeting wealthy patients. The trap was closing, identical to 5 years ago. Different building, same architect. In the cafeteria, voices carried just loud enough. Made up fraud claims before, apparently. Targets rich families, creates drama, threatens lawsuits. Bianca spent hours trying to find someone who would listen. The administrator was in meetings. The patient advocate's tone suggested her concerns would be filed into trash. Even the social worker looked at her with new wariness. By afternoon, exhausted and desperate, she stood in the parking lot as rain began falling in heavy drops. A black Mercedes pulled up beside her. Adrian Knight stepped out, his expression thunderous. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Really? He moved closer, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. What about the suspicious documents and hospital records? Attempted file access? A pattern of behavior? Your partner is lying. The words exploded from her. Graves destroyed my life 5 years ago, and he's doing it again. Dr. Graves has an impeccable reputation. He's a fraud. Rain streamed down her face. He falsified research, manipulated birth records, destroyed evidence, and when I tried to expose him, he buried me. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're hysterical. The word was a slap. Hysterical. The same word Graves had used 5 years ago. Of course. Bitter laughter escaped her throat. The crazy woman making wild accusations. That's what he told you, isn't it? That I'm unstable? Opportunistic? Are you denying it? She stared at him. This man who'd never had to fight to be believed. I can't prove anything to you. Not yet. But I will. Miss Esteban, stay away from me, and stay away from my mother. She ran, not caring that she had no car, no umbrella. Behind her he called her name, but she didn't stop. The rain was relentless. By the time she reached her apartment building, 3 flights up, peeling paint, broken elevator, she was shivering uncontrollably. Inside, water dripped through a window crack, pooling on warped floorboards. Maria rested on the narrow bed, her eyes sharp with concern. Mija. Bianca collapsed beside her, finally letting the sobs come. It's happening again, Mama. Exactly like before. Maria's fingers combed through Bianca's wet hair. Listen to me. You were right 5 years ago, and you're right now. The difference is, this time you fight. How? Everyone believes him. Then make them believe you. Maria squeezed her hand. The truth is still hidden where you left it. In the safe. Use it. The old lockbox, buried in her closet. Inside were the original documents, proof of Graves's manipulation, falsified records from the Night Labs project, emails he'd thought deleted, evidence she'd been too terrified to use when he crushed her the first time. Bianca stood slowly, her heart hammering. Through the cracked window, lightning split the darkening sky. She'd run once, hidden, let fear make her small. Not this time. Adrian Knight didn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse, rain hammering the windows, staring at Graves's files. Something nagged at him, Dates that didn't align. Inconsistencies he couldn't ignore. The hospital incident report from 5 years ago. Bianca's supposed termination in March 2020, but university records showed her enrolled through May. Then the IP address timestamp from last night, 2:47 a.m. He'd left the hospital at 2:30 and had seen Bianca asleep beside her mother's bed, one hand clutching Maria's. She couldn't have been hacking systems while unconscious. Adrian pulled up more documents. Birth certificates, research protocols from his mother's genetic mapping project. Graves had been her co-researcher, taking over after her death. A project Adrian had never fully understood, despite owning the company. He found another inconsistency, then another. Stamps appearing before authentication offices existed, signatures that varied between forms. The kind of details Bianca Esteban, trained in genetics, meticulous by nature, would absolutely notice. Damn it. He grabbed his keys and headed for the elevator. The address led to a neighborhood his GPS seemed offended to acknowledge. Crumbling buildings, flickering streetlights, his Mercedes drawing suspicious stares. Apartment 3C was at the top of a narrow stairwell reeking of mildew. Through thin walls he heard voices. Bianca's, tight with frustration. Her mother's, weaker but insistent. He knocked. The door cracked open, chain attached. Bianca's eyes hardened. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you." "We have nothing." "Please." The word came out rough. 5 minutes. She stared, then unchained the door. "Fine. But then you leave." The apartment was smaller than his closet. One room with a kitchenette, a bathroom visible through a half-open door, and a bed where Maria sat propped against pillows, oxygen cannula in place, but painfully clean. Every surface scrubbed. The desperate order people maintained when chaos was one bill away from consuming everything. On the counter, expensive prescription bottles. Beside them, overdue payment notices. His chest tightened. "You've seen enough?" Bianca's voice was cold. "This is what failure looks like, Mr. Knight. I didn't come to judge you." "Then why?" "Because the timeline doesn't match." He met her eyes. "I want to hear your side, the real version." Bianca laughed, sharp and bitter. "Why, so you can find more reasons I'm lying?" "Mijo." Maria's voice was soft but clear. "Let him sit. Listen to her. Por favor." Adrian turned to the older woman, struck by how she looked at him, not with awe, but recognition, as if she knew him. "Please," Maria said. "She tells the truth." Bianca moved protectively to her mother. "Mama, don't." "Show him the documents, Bianca. The real ones." Silence stretched. Finally, Bianca pulled a battered lockbox from the closet. Inside were folders stuffed with papers, photographs, emails. She spread them across the table, hands trembling. "This is from the Knight Lab's genetic mapping project. Your mother started it in 2003. Graves was her partner." Adrian leaned closer. His mother's signature on several documents. Research protocols. Birth records cross-referenced with DNA samples. Then he saw it, altered birth records. Children whose genetic markers didn't match documented parents. Babies were switched, Bianca said quietly, deliberately. Graves was tracking hereditary traits, manipulating the control group by swapping newborns. "That's impossible." When your mother discovered what he was doing, she confronted him. Bianca pulled out another document. "See the date? 2 weeks before she died." Adrian's blood ran cold. His mother had died in a car accident. Brake failure. "You think he killed her. I think she was going to expose him." Bianca's voice steadied. "And when I found the same evidence 5 years ago, he destroyed my credibility before I could destroy his." Adrian stared at his mother's handwriting. Notes about concerning patterns and ethical violations. He looked up. "Why didn't you come forward?" "I tried. No one believed me. And when Graves threatened my mother," she glanced at Maria, "I had to choose between justice and survival." The honesty cracked something in Adrian's chest. "I lied about my background to get work," Bianca continued. "Changed my name on applications. I was terrified he'd find me. But I kept the evidence." "I believe you." The words surprised them both. "We take him down," Adrian said. "Together." The building's basement smelled like rust and forgotten things. Bianca led Adrian down concrete steps slick with moisture, their footsteps echoing in the narrow space. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows that seemed to pulse with each swing of the ancient chain. "It's back here." Her voice was tight. "I couldn't keep it in the apartment. Too risky if he ever came looking." She stopped at a storage cage, wire mesh barely holding together, padlock corroded with age. Inside, buried beneath boxes of her mother's old belongings, sat the metal lockbox. Adrian watched her hands tremble as she worked the combination. 3 tries before the lock clicked open. The folders inside were thick, edges yellowed with time. Official seals from St. Catherine's Hospital. Night Lab's letterhead. Photographs that looked like they'd been hidden for decades. Bianca spread them across a dusty workbench, her movements careful, reverent. This is everything I found 5 years ago. Everything Graves tried to bury. Adrian leaned closer. The first document was a research protocol dated 2003. His mother's elegant signature at the bottom, co-signed by Lionel Graves. Hereditary genetic marker study, tracking inherited traits across generational lines. Nothing seemed wrong until he saw the next page. Birth records with subtle alterations. Dates that didn't match hospital admission logs. Infant identification numbers that appeared on multiple certificates. They were switching babies, Bianca said quietly. Not all of them. Just specific ones with particular genetic markers. Graves wanted to test whether hereditary traits were stronger than environmental factors, so she swallowed hard. He swapped children between families, created false control groups. Adrian's stomach turned. That's not research, that's criminal. She pulled out another folder. Here, approval forms for genetic testing that were never submitted to the ethics board. Graves forged the signatures. His mother's name appeared again and again, but the handwriting varied slightly between documents. Too subtle for most people to notice, but once you looked closely, he was using her reputation to legitimize fraud, Adrian breathed. Until she found out. Bianca's fingers traced a photograph, his mother, younger, standing in a hospital corridor. On her shoulder, visible beneath her sleeve, was the birthmark, 3 points forming a triangle. Beside it, another photo. Maria Esteban, decades younger, holding an infant. The same birthmark on her shoulder. Adrian's heart hammered. You think one of the switched babies belonged to your mother? Bianca's voice cracked. Or to mine. The records are deliberately obscured, but the genetic markers match. Margaret Knight and Maria Esteban were both part of the study. Both had children in the same month. Both have the same hereditary birthmark. The implication hit him like a physical blow. We could be related, siblings maybe, or cousins. She looked at him and he saw his own shock reflected in her eyes. I don't know for certain, but Graves does. And when your mother discovered what he'd done, she tried to fix it. Adrian found the next document, his mother's handwritten notes. Ethical violations severe. Children's identities compromised. Must report to board immediately. Families deserve truth. The date, 2 weeks before her fatal car accident. He killed her. Adrian's voice was hollow. She was going to expose him, so he killed her. I can't prove that. Bianca's hand covered his, warm and steady. But I tried to expose him 5 years ago, and he destroyed every aspect of my life in 48 hours. What would he do to someone who could actually ruin him? Adrian's grief crystallized into something harder. Rage. The basement door creaked open above them. Both tensed until a familiar voice called down. Bianca? You down there? Oliver! Relief flooded her voice. A man in his 40s descended, carrying a laptop bag and looking simultaneously exhausted and wired. Oliver Hayes, the investigative journalist Bianca had mentioned. His eyes widened at the documents spread across the bench. Jesus, you actually kept everything. Oliver's been helping me track Graves's movements, Bianca explained, making sure he doesn't know I'm still digging. Oliver set down his laptop, pulling up files. I've been monitoring Night Lab's servers for the past week. Graves has been systematically deleting files, decades of research data, patient records, correspondence, everything connected to the 2003 study. Can you recover it? Adrian demanded. Already did. Oliver's grin was fierce. I have contacts in data forensics. We pulled everything from backup servers before he could wipe those too. Birth certificates, genetic test results, email chains discussing the switches. It's all here. Adrian stared at the screen, watching folders upon folders of evidence materialize. His mother's emails to Graves, increasingly concerned. Graves's responses, dismissive then threatening. The final email, sent the day before she died. If you don't come forward, I will. These families deserve the truth. Our friendship ends here. I'm sorry. Bianca's voice was soft. I know this is... Don't. Adrian's jaw was tight. Don't apologize for his crimes, or for my blindness. He looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd lost everything trying to do the right thing, while he'd built an empire on his partner's lies. I should have listened to you from the start. I should have questioned him years ago. You didn't know. I should have. The words tasted like ash. My mother knew, and it got her killed. Silence settled over the basement, heavy with shared grief and building determination. Finally, Oliver spoke. The annual Night Labs Gala is in 3 days. Press, investors, every major player in biotech will be there. Adrian straightened, his expression hardening into something cold and calculating. Then that's where we end him. Bianca's breath caught. Adrian, if we go public without ironclad proof, we have ironclad proof. He gestured to the documents, the laptop, the years of evidence spread between them. And I have the platform. Graves can spin lies to hospital administrators and shareholders, but he can't spin this. Not when I'm standing beside you, showing the world what he really is. He'll fight back, Oliver warned. Dirty. He'll come after all of us. Let him try. Adrian met Bianca's eyes. I'm done letting him win. We expose everything. The switches, the fraud, my mother's murder, all of it. Bianca searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, found only fierce determination. Together, she said finally. Together. Graves discovered the investigation within 24 hours. Adrian was in a board meeting when his phone exploded with messages. Shareholders demanding explanations, investors questioning his judgment, all citing concerning allegations about the CEO's recent associations. The leak was surgical, precise. Graves had spent decades building influence, and now he wielded it like a scalpel. Adrian, his assistant knocked urgently. The board is requesting an emergency session, tonight. He knew without asking what they'd discuss, how to remove him before he damaged the company further. Across town, Bianca was halfway through her dinner shift when the diner's window exploded inward. Glass scattered across tables as a brick landed near her feet, wrapped in paper. She grabbed it with shaking hands, unfolded the note. Stop or your mother pays. The words were printed, anonymous, utterly clear. Around her, customers screamed and scattered. Her manager rushed over, face pale. What the hell? Bianca's phone rang. Adrian, are you hurt? His voice was sharp with fear. How did you? I have someone watching your building. Get out, now. Don't go home. Don't go to the hospital. I'm sending a car. Adrian, I can't just... Bianca. The raw fear in his voice stopped her. He's escalating. If he's threatening your mother, he won't stop at threats. 20 minutes later, she was in the back of a black SUV, Adrian beside her, heading toward St. Catherine's Hospital. They collected Maria, who was awake and surprisingly calm, and drove to a downtown hotel with security that looked more military than hospitality. Penthouse suite, Adrian told the guard. No one gets up without my explicit authorization. In the elevator, Maria gripped Bianca's hand. Mija, this man, he's keeping us safe? Yes, Mama. Good. Maria studied Adrian with those sharp eyes that saw too much. You have your mother's determination. She would be proud. The words clearly hit him. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. The suite was obscenely luxurious, 3 bedrooms, living area bigger than Bianca's entire apartment. She settled Maria in bed while Adrian made calls, his voice clipped and commanding. When she emerged, he was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Don't care what the board wants. Schedule the press conference for the gala. No, not negotiable. He hung up, ran a hand through his hair. Graves has been busy. He's convinced half the board I'm having a breakdown, associating with unstable individuals, risking the company's reputation. He's not wrong about the risk, Bianca said quietly. He's not wrong that I'm associating with you. Adrian's smile was sharp. He's wrong that it's a problem. The suite phone rang. Adrian answered, listened, his expression darkening. Send her up. Who? Nina Brooks, my ex-fiancée. He said it like a curse. Apparently she has information I need to hear. Nina swept into the suite 5 minutes later, all elegant fury in a designer dress. She was beautiful, objectively, undeniably, with the kind of polish that came from old money and newer ambitions. Her eyes landed on Bianca with open contempt. So it's true. The waitress. Nina. Adrian's voice was ice. What do you want? To warn you. She pulled out her phone, showing a gossip site headline. Billionaire CEO's shocking affair. Night ditches society for diner waitress with shady past. Below it, photos. Bianca leaving the hospital. Adrian entering her apartment building, carefully framed to look sordid, scandalous. Graves sent you this, Adrian said flatly. He's trying to help you. Nina's voice softened with false concern. This woman is using you, Adrian. She has a history of targeting wealthy men. Get out. Excuse me? I said get out. Adrian stepped forward, and something in his expression made Nina retreat a step. I know exactly what Graves is doing. And if you're helping him, you're complicit in fraud, conspiracy, and possibly murder. Nina paled. You can't prove. I can prove everything. And when I do, anyone who stood with him goes down too. His smile was dangerous. Choose carefully, Nina. She left in a storm of Chanel and threats. Bianca sank onto the couch, pulling up her phone. Social media was exploding. Her face everywhere, her name trending. Comments calling her everything from gold digger to criminal. Don't read it, Adrian said gently. Too late. Her voice cracked. This is what he does. Makes you doubt yourself before he destroys you. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth. He's scared. That's why he's lashing out. We're winning. Doesn't feel like winning. Not yet. He took her hand, his grip firm. But in 3 days, at that gala, everyone will know the truth. I promise you, I will stand on that stage beside you, and we will end him. Bianca looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, saw determination and something else, something that made her heart skip despite everything. Why are you doing this? Really? Because it's right, he said simply. And because you tried to do it alone 5 years ago and no one believed you. You won't be alone this time. Outside, the city glittered, unaware of the war being waged in its shadows. Inside, 3 people prepared for battle. The Night Lab's annual gala transformed the Metropolitan Ballroom into something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across marble floors, champagne flowing like water. 500 of the world's most powerful people gathered in designer gowns and tailored suits. Bianca stood at the entrance, her borrowed dress feeling like armor. Beside her, Adrian adjusted his cufflinks with steady hands, but she caught the tension in his jaw. Last chance to run, she whispered. His answer was to take her hand and step into the light. The reaction was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned in synchronized shock. Bianca felt the weight of hundreds of eyes cataloging everything about her. The off-the-rack dress, the lack of jewelry, the face they'd seen splashed across gossip sites for the past 72 hours. Adrian! A board member hurried over, face flushed. What are you doing? We agreed you'd make a brief appearance, nothing more. Plans changed. Adrian's voice carried, deliberate and clear. I'm giving the keynote tonight, non-negotiable. That's not. But Adrian was already moving, Bianca's hand still in his, cutting a path through the crowd toward the stage. She caught whispers following them like a wake. The waitress. Absolute scandal. Heard she's blackmailing him. Then another voice, cold and familiar. Adrian. Stop. Lionel Graves stood blocking their path, impeccable in his tuxedo, his smile sharp as broken glass. You're making a mistake. Think about your mother's legacy. Think about the company. I am thinking about my mother. Adrian's voice was steel. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Security? Graves called, but Adrian was already moving past him, pulling Bianca up the stage steps. The ballroom erupted in confused murmurs. Someone killed the background music. Journalists raised cameras, sensing blood in the water. Adrian took the microphone, his presence commanding instant attention. Thank you all for coming tonight. I have an announcement that will change everything you know about Night Lab's genetics. The lights dimmed. Behind them, the massive screen flickered to life. Documents appeared, clinical, damning, impossible to ignore. Birth certificates with altered dates. Genetic test results that didn't match recorded parents. Research protocols stamped unauthorized. Oliver Hayes stepped onto the stage from the other side, laptop in hand. My name is Oliver Hayes, investigative journalist. What you're seeing are authentic documents from a decades-long conspiracy involving genetic manipulation and infant trafficking. The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, the frantic clicking of cameras. Graves shoved toward the stage. This is defamation. That woman, he pointed at Bianca with shaking hands, has manipulated these files. She's a known fraudster who tried this exact scheme 5 years ago. Is that what you told everyone? Bianca's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by her microphone. Her heart hammered, but her words came steady. That I was crazy, unstable, a liar. You were fired for cause. I was destroyed for discovering the truth. She stepped forward. The truth that Dr. Graves systematically switched babies as part of unauthorized genetic research, that he falsified records, forged signatures, and when Margaret Knight tried to stop him, lies. Graves's composure cracked. She has no proof. Adrian's voice was cold. Actually, we have everything. The screen changed. Emails appeared, Graves's name in the sender field, discussing subject swaps and control group manipulation, and horrifyingly, eliminating obstacles. One email made the crowd gasp. Margaret is becoming a liability. She must be handled before she contacts the board. Dated 1 week before Adrian's mother died. You son of a bitch, Adrian breathed, staring at words he'd never seen. You killed her. I saved the research, Graves shouted, all pretense shattering. Your mother was going to destroy decades of work over sentimental nonsense about consent. The science was more important. The science involved stealing children. Bianca's voice shook with fury. Destroying families, manipulating lives. For the greater good. The ballroom was in chaos now. Investors demanding answers. Board members shouting denials. Journalists rushing the stage. Then Maria Esteban appeared, supported by a nurse, moving slowly but deliberately toward the stairs. Adrian helped her up, and sudden silence fell. Maria stood center stage and, with careful dignity, lowered her cardigan from her shoulder. The birthmark was clearly visible, 3 points in a distinctive triangle. My daughter tells the truth, Maria said quietly, her voice carrying in the stunned silence. I have carried this mark my whole life, as did Margaret Knight, as does one other person in this room. Adrian pulled up a photograph on the screen, his mother, young and smiling, the same birthmark visible on her shoulder. 2 women, Oliver said, his voice cutting through the silence. Both part of Graves's study. Both gave birth within days of each other. Both had children who should have shared this hereditary marker. He paused, letting the implication sink in. But only one child was documented with the birthmark, which means at least one baby was switched. Identities stolen. Families destroyed. Graves's face had gone from red to white. You can't prove. We can prove all of it, Adrian said. Every switch. Every falsified record. Every life you ruined. He looked at Graves with absolute contempt. Including my mother's. Your mother was weak. Graves exploded, all control gone. She couldn't see the bigger picture. None of you can. That girl, he stabbed a finger at Bianca, never should have been born. She's an aberration, a mistake in the data. The words hung in the air like poison. Police officers appeared at the ballroom entrance. Adrian had planned this perfectly, giving Graves enough rope to hang himself in front of 500 witnesses and 24 cameras. Dr. Lionel Graves, the lead detective said, moving toward the stage. You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, destruction of evidence, and suspicion of murder. Graves tried to run, made it 3 steps before officers grabbed him. As they cuffed his hands, he screamed incoherent threats and justifications, his carefully constructed reputation crumbling in real time. Cameras captured everything. As they dragged him from the ballroom, Graves locked eyes with Bianca one last time. She stared back, unflinching. She'd won. The emergency board meeting lasted 6 hours. Adrian sat at the head of the table, exhausted but resolute, as shareholders and executives processed the magnitude of the scandal. Knight Labs stock had dropped 30% overnight. Every major news outlet carried the story. The FBI had opened a formal investigation. We need damage control, the CFO said desperately. A statement distancing the company from Graves's actions. No. Adrian's voice was firm. We take full responsibility. Knight Labs enabled this for 20 years. We issue a public apology, initiate an independent audit, and cooperate completely with law enforcement. That could destroy us. We deserve to be destroyed if we can't face what we've done. Adrian met each board member's eyes. My mother died trying to stop this. I won't dishonor her memory by covering it up. By morning, Knight Labs issued a statement that made headlines worldwide, acknowledging internal crimes, announcing Adrian's resignation as sole authority, and establishing an ethics oversight board with independent leadership. The statement specifically named Bianca Esteban as the whistleblower, whose courage had exposed decades of corruption. Bianca's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Every news organization wanted an interview. Book deals, speaking engagements. Her inbox overflowed with messages from victims' families, thanking her, sharing their own stories of children who'd never felt like they belonged. She declined everything. Mom needs stability, she told Oliver, who'd become an unexpected friend. Not media circus? Fair enough. He smiled. But the story needs to be told. I'm publishing the full investigation next week. Your name will be cleared. It already was, officially. The hospital released a statement exonerating her completely, acknowledging that Dr. Graves had falsified records to frame her 5 years ago. Her personnel file was expunged, her research credentials restored. 3 universities contacted her about reactivating her genetics degree and offering positions. Meanwhile, Nina Brooks tried to flee to Switzerland. She made it as far as JFK before federal agents detained her for questioning. Her involvement with Graves ran deeper than anyone suspected. She'd helped him manipulate board votes, intimidate witnesses, spread disinformation. Her pristine reputation disintegrated as quickly as his. Oliver's article dropped like a bomb. The Night Lab's Conspiracy. How one man destroyed families for science. It was comprehensive, devastating, impeccably sourced. Within hours, it was the most read piece in the publication's history. The article included interviews with other victims, parents who'd always felt their children looked wrong, children who'd struggled with identity issues, families torn apart by secrets they'd never understood, and it named Bianca as the hero who'd risked everything to expose the truth. St. Catherine's Hospital released its own findings, confirming at least 17 documented baby switches between 2003 and 2008. The number was likely higher, but many records had been destroyed. DNA testing clinics experienced unprecedented demand as families sought answers. 1 week after the gala, Bianca received a certified letter from Columbia University. Dear Ms. Esteban, after reviewing your academic record and the circumstances of your departure, the university has decided to fully restore your master's degree in biomolecular genetics. Additionally, we would like to offer you a position as a research fellow in our genetics ethics program. She read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Maria squeezed her hand. You see, Mika, the truth always wins. Eventually, Adrian called a press conference to announce Night Labs' restructuring. Effective immediately, we're implementing the strictest ethical oversight in the industry, he said, facing a sea of cameras. Every research project will be reviewed by an independent board. Every subject will provide informed consent. And we're establishing the Margaret Knight Memorial Fund to support victims of genetic research abuse. Questions flew at him like weapons. Will you step down as CEO? I'm transitioning to chairman. Day-to-day operations will be handled by new leadership committed to transparency. What about your relationship with Bianca Esteban? Adrian's expression softened slightly. Ms. Esteban is a hero who sacrificed her career to expose corruption. She deserves privacy, respect, and the chance to rebuild her life without media harassment. He paused, then added, and she deserves far better than what this company put her through. That evening, in the quiet of Maria's hospital room, she'd been admitted for proper treatment. Finally covered by insurance, Adrian had quietly arranged. Bianca sat holding her mother's hand. There's something I need to tell you, Maria said softly, about the night you were born. Bianca's heart clenched. Mama, you don't have to. I do. Maria's eyes were clear, determined. There were 3 babies born that night with our genetic markers. 3. Mine, Margaret Knight's, and 1 other. 3? Only 1 survived the switching without complications. The other 2, Maria's voice broke. They died within months. Unexplained infant death syndrome, the records said. But I always wondered. Bianca's breath caught. You think Graves? I think you survived because you were strong. Because you were meant to expose this. Maria gripped her hand tighter. You are the proof of his crimes, Mija. That's why he feared you so much. Outside, the city lights glittered. Inside, truth finally settled like peace. Bianca had won. But more than that, she'd survived. 3 weeks after the gala, Adrian stood outside Bianca's apartment door, holding coffee and feeling more nervous than he had facing 500 people at the ballroom. He knocked, waited. When she opened the door, her surprise was genuine. Adrian, I thought you were in depositions all week. I was, finished early. He held up the cups awkwardly. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped back. Mom's at physical therapy. It's just me. The apartment looked different. Still small, still worn, but somehow lighter. Someone had fixed the window. New curtains filtered afternoon sun into something almost warm. I wanted to apologize, Adrian said, setting down the coffee. Properly, without cameras or lawyers or board members. Bianca crossed her arms, defensive. You already apologized, publicly, several times. Not for that. He exhaled slowly. For being a coward. For being so arrogant I believed power and reputation over truth. For looking at you in that hospital and choosing to doubt you, instead of questioning him. The words settled between them, honest and raw. Bianca's expression softened slightly. You didn't know. I should have. His voice was fierce. My mother died trying to expose him, and I spent 20 years building an empire on his lies. You risked everything to tell the truth, and I treated you like a threat. You were protecting what you thought was real. I was protecting my comfort. Adrian met her eyes. It was easier to believe you were lying than to face what believing you would cost me. Silence stretched. Outside, a car horn blared. Inside, something shifted. I've been terrified of powerful men my entire life, Bianca said quietly, because of what Graves did. How easily he destroyed me. How no one questioned him because he had the right credentials, the right connections, the right voice. She looked at Adrian. You have all of that too. That's what scared me most. I know. He took a careful step closer. And I can't change what I have, but I can change how I use it. You already are. Because you showed me how. He smiled slightly. That first day in the diner, when you called me out for criticizing the place, I was furious. No one talks to me like that. I remember. You looked like you wanted to have me fired. I did. His smile widened. But I also couldn't stop thinking about you. This woman who saw through every wall I'd built and wasn't impressed by any of it. Who cared more about defending a rundown diner than pleasing a billionaire? Bianca's breath caught. Adrian. I'm not saying I fell in love with you in that moment, but I felt something. A crack in the armor I'd been wearing so long I forgot it wasn't really me. He moved closer, close enough to see gold flecks in her brown eyes. And every time we fought, every time you challenged me, that crack got wider until I couldn't ignore what was underneath. What was underneath? Someone who was tired of being alone, of choosing power over people, of living in a world my mother would have hated. His voice dropped. Someone who wanted to deserve a woman like you. Bianca's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I tried so hard not to feel anything. You were everything I'd learned to fear, rich, powerful, connected to Graves. But then you believed me. You stood beside me when you could have walked away. She touched his face gently. You chose truth over empire. That's when I knew. Knew what? That maybe not all powerful men were monsters. From the bedroom, Maria's voice called out, Dios mío, are you two going to talk all day or are you going to kiss? They both startled, then laughed. I thought you said she was at therapy, Adrian said. She was supposed to be. Bianca called back. Mama, you're supposed to be resting. I'm resting, and giving my blessing. Maria appeared in the doorway, leaning on her walker, her smile warm. This man, mija, he's good, like his mother was good. It's a late healing, but it's the right one. Mrs. Esteban, I don't want to presume. You love my daughter? Adrian looked at Bianca, his expression unguarded. Yes. Then stop talking and show her. Maria retreated, chuckling, leaving them alone again. Adrian pulled an envelope from his jacket. Oliver asked me to give you this. Final documentation from the investigation. Bianca opened it with trembling hands. Inside were genetic test results, birth records, hospital logs, all official, all verified. Your original investigation was completely accurate, Adrian said softly. Every claim you made 5 years ago was true. Graves falsified the evidence that discredited you. You were never wrong. She stared at the papers, vindication and grief mingling in her chest. 5 years of doubt, of second-guessing herself, of wondering if maybe she had misinterpreted the data, all of it erased by these simple documents. I want you to know, Adrian continued, whatever you decide to do next, whether you want to speak publicly, stay private, pursue research, or walk away from genetics entirely, I'll support you. No pressure, no expectations. Your voice, your choice. Bianca set down the papers and stepped into his space, close enough to feel his warmth. What if what I want is this? You, me, figuring it out together? Then that's what we do. She reached up, fingers threading through his hair, and kissed him. Not desperate or rushed, but deliberate, a choice made with clear eyes and an open heart. Adrian's arms came around her, careful and sure, and for the first time in either of their lives, holding someone felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Bianca smiled. So what now? Now? Adrian rested his forehead against hers. We build something real. No lies, no secrets, just truth and whatever comes next. I can work with that. They stood together in the afternoon light, two people who'd survived different kinds of betrayal, choosing to trust despite everything they'd learned about how badly trust could go wrong. It wasn't the beginning of a fairy tale. It was something better, the beginning of something real. The trial of Dr. Lionel Graves lasted 6 weeks and dominated every news cycle. The courtroom was packed daily. Victims' families, journalists, medical ethicists, and countless people whose lives had been touched by his crimes. Bianca sat in the front row for every session, refusing to hide. When called to testify, she walked to the stand with her head high. Ms. Esteban, the prosecutor began gently. Please describe what happened when you first discovered the irregularities. Bianca's voice was steady. I was a research assistant, excited to be working with someone of Dr. Graves's reputation. But when I started cross-referencing genetic markers with birth records, I noticed discrepancies. Babies whose DNA didn't match their documented parents. Patterns that suggested systematic manipulation. What did you do? I compiled evidence, prepared a report, scheduled a meeting with Dr. Graves to discuss my concerns. She looked directly at him across the courtroom. He didn't meet her eyes. He listened carefully, asked detailed questions. Then, within 48 hours, I was fired, my research was confiscated, and rumors began spreading that I'd fabricated data. How did this affect your life? I lost my career, my reputation, my future in the field I loved. I lost 5 years working minimum wage jobs, terrified that if I used my real credentials, he'd destroy me again. Her voice strengthened. But I never lost the truth. I kept the evidence, and I waited for someone to finally listen. The gallery was silent. Graves's defense tried to paint her as bitter, vindictive, mentally unstable. But Bianca had documentation for everything. Timestamps, witness statements, the original unaltered research that proved her conclusions had been correct. When Adrian took the stand, his testimony was equally damning. Dr. Graves was my mother's partner. I trusted him implicitly after her death. He assured me the company's research was ethical, that protocols were followed. Adrian's jaw tightened. I now know he used my grief and my trust to continue committing crimes. I take full responsibility for not investigating sooner. You believe Dr. Graves was involved in your mother's death? I believe my mother discovered his fraud and confronted him. I believe the timing of her death, 2 weeks after that confrontation, is not coincidental. And I believe if I hadn't been so blind, she might still be alive. The prosecution presented email evidence, falsified documents, testimony from hospital staff who'd been pressured to alter records. The defense had nothing but character witnesses who hadn't seen Graves in years and weak claims about scientific necessity. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Genetic manipulation, fraud, destruction of evidence, conspiracy, accessory to wrongful death. Graves was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. As they led him away, he finally looked at Bianca. She stared back, unflinching. She'd won, completely. The aftermath was surgical and thorough. Bianca's research rights were officially restored. The university that had revoked her credentials issued a formal apology and offered a full scholarship for her PhD. Her name was cleared in every database, every record, every system that had labeled her a fraud. Adrian established the Esteban Knight Foundation with an initial endowment of $50 million, dedicated to supporting victims of genetic research abuse and funding ethical oversight in biomedical research. At the first board meeting, he announced that Bianca would serve as co-director. I can't accept that, she protested privately. People will say I'm only here because we're together. People will say lots of things. Adrian took her hands. But you earned this. Your research, your courage, your integrity, that's why you belong here. I'm just the guy with the money. Maria's medical treatment became comprehensive and properly funded. The chronic conditions that had gone untreated for years finally received attention. Color returned to her cheeks, strength to her movements. I should have done this years ago, Bianca said, watching her mother laugh with the physical therapist. You did what you could with what you had, Maria corrected. Now you have more. Use it wisely. Bianca returned to research, enrolling in Columbia's genetics ethics program. Her first published paper on the importance of consent in genetic research was cited within weeks. Adrian gradually transferred control of key Night Labs projects to her oversight, trusting her judgment over his own business instincts. The company transformed under their joint leadership, slower growth, but ethically sound, transparent, and genuinely innovative. One afternoon, Nina Brooks appeared at Bianca's office. "I came to apologize," she said stiffly, "for what I said, for helping Graves, for everything." Bianca studied her for a long moment. "I appreciate that, but I don't forgive you." Nina's face fell. "I was manipulated. You chose to be manipulated because it benefited you. You attacked me publicly, spread lies, tried to destroy what little credibility I had left." Bianca's voice was calm but firm. "You don't get to feel better by apologizing. You get to live with what you did." Nina left without another word. Adrian found Bianca later, staring out the window. "You okay?" "Better than okay." She turned to him, smiling. "For 5 years I apologized for existing, apologized for telling the truth, apologized for surviving." She moved into his arms. "I'm done apologizing." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "You never should have had to." They stood together, looking out at the city they'd both been shaped by. He by power and privilege, she by struggle and survival. Different paths that had somehow led to the same place. "We're building something real," Bianca said softly. "We are. Based on truth. Always." Outside, the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, two people who'd been broken by lies began building a future on the foundation of truth. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real, and that was enough. "You're serious about this?" Adrian stood in the doorway of the modest 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, looking bemused. Bianca set down a box of books, smiling. "Completely serious. Your penthouse is beautiful, but it's not us. Not yet. It's a 4th-floor walk-up, with a working elevator most days." She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "And windows that don't cost more than my old annual salary. I need to build this life from something real, Adrian, not jump straight into a world I didn't earn." He studied her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but I'm buying you proper cookware. That pan you brought looks like a crime scene." "Deal." They spent the next month making the space theirs, Adrian learning to live without staff, cooking dinners that were occasionally edible, discovering that happiness didn't require marble countertops. Bianca watched him adapt with something close to wonder. This man who'd been raised with every privilege now genuinely content, folding laundry while she graded student papers. "Who are you, and what did you do with the billionaire who yelled at me in the diner?" she teased one evening. Adrian looked up from the pasta he was attempting, hair falling in his eyes, sauce on his shirt. He met someone who made him want to be better. Simple words. They hit her square in the chest. Maria's health continued improving with proper treatment. Bianca took her to appointments twice a week, no longer terrified of hospitals, no longer looking over her shoulder for threats that no longer existed. "You're different now, mija," Maria observed during one drive home. "Lighter. I'm not carrying 5 years of fear anymore." "Good. Fear is heavy. Love is lighter." At Night Labs, the new Scientific Transparency Division launched with Bianca as Chief Ethics Consultant. She spent her days reviewing research proposals, training new scientists on consent protocols, and mentoring young researchers, especially women, who reminded her of who she'd been. "You gave me my career back," one young scientist told her tearfully. "I was about to quit after my supervisor stole my research, but I read your story and I reported him instead. These moments made everything worthwhile." Adrian accompanied her to conferences and speaking engagements, but always positioned himself in the background. When photographers tried to frame shots with him prominently, he'd step aside, redirecting attention to Bianca. "You're the story," he'd say. "I'm just lucky enough to be part of it." One quiet Sunday morning, making breakfast in their small kitchen, he asked, "Have you thought about marriage?" Bianca nearly dropped the spatula. "That's quite a shift from scrambled eggs." "I'm serious." He turned off the stove, facing her fully. "I'm not proposing right now. I have plans for that, but I want to know if it's something you'd want. Eventually." Her heart raced. "With you?" "Preferably with me, yes." She pretended to consider. "I suppose I could be convinced." His smile was radiant. "Good, because I'm absolutely going to ask. I'm absolutely going to say yes." They kissed in the morning light, the smell of slightly burnt eggs surrounding them, both laughing. Oliver Hayes became an unexpected constant in their lives, showing up for dinners, bringing wine, offering unsolicited relationship advice that was surprisingly sound. "You two are disgustingly happy," he complained without heat. "It's making me reconsider my commitment to cynicism." "Good," Bianca said. "You should date someone. I'm married to my work. Your work is investigating corruption. That's not a healthy relationship," says the woman who fell for a billionaire while exposing genetic fraud. "Touché." Maria began writing her memoirs, not for publication, she insisted, but for the historical record. Bianca would find her at the kitchen table, papers spread around her, carefully documenting everything she remembered about the night Bianca was born. The years of silence. The moment truth finally emerged. "Someone should know," Maria explained. "Not just the scandal, but what it felt like to carry this secret, to love a daughter while not knowing if she was truly mine by blood, and deciding it didn't matter." "It never mattered," Bianca said, kissing her mother's head. "It always mattered, but love mattered more." 6 months after the trial, Bianca returned to the Sunset Diner. She stood outside for a long moment, memories washing over her, serving tables, her mother collapsing, Adrian's cold judgment, the birthmark that changed everything. Inside, the same cracked vinyl booths, the same smell of coffee and grease. Sarah, her old manager, looked up and smiled. "Bianca, heard you're some fancy scientist now." "Still just me." She slid into a booth. "Coffee?" They talked for an hour, about life, changes, the future. When Bianca left, she felt something settle inside her chest. Peace. The diner no longer represented failure or fear. It was simply where her story began. That evening, Adrian asked her to take a drive. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." He pulled up to her old apartment building, now slated for renovation. They went to the basement, that dusty space where they'd first truly allied, where evidence had been hidden in darkness. The old storage cage was still there, empty now. Adrian knelt beside it, pulling a small box from his pocket. "This is where you kept the truth when no one else would believe it, where you refused to let fear destroy what you knew was right." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "I want to build our future on the same foundation. Truth, courage, trust." Bianca's breath caught. "Bianca Esteban, will you marry me?" She pulled him to his feet, kissing him fiercely. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and they stood together in that basement, where darkness had once hidden truth, now illuminated by the future they'd choose together. Outside, rain began to fall. Neither of them was afraid of storms anymore. The grand opening of the Esteban Knight Foundation headquarters occurred on a bright October morning, exactly 1 year after the gala that changed everything. The building wasn't the tallest or flashiest in Manhattan, but it was purposefully designed, transparent glass walls symbolizing openness, a public research library on the ground floor, and offices dedicated entirely to protecting vulnerable researchers and supporting victims of scientific misconduct. Bianca stood backstage, adjusting her dress, elegant but not ostentatious, powerful but not intimidating. Through the curtain, she could see the auditorium filled to capacity. Scientists, ethicists, journalists, families whose lives had been touched by Graves's crimes. "You ready?" Adrian asked, appearing beside her. Terrified. "You've testified in federal court, given keynote addresses at 3 major conferences. This should be easy. Those were about the past." She took his hand. "This is about the future. That's scarier." He kissed her forehead. "You'll be brilliant." When her name was called, Bianca walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, and felt something shift inside her. The final piece of the frightened, hiding version of herself falling away. "Thank you for being here," she began. "A year ago, I was a waitress with a secret and a certainty that no one would ever believe me. Today, I stand before you as proof that truth, no matter how long it's buried, eventually finds light." She spoke about ethics in research, about the courage required to challenge authority, about building systems that protect whistleblowers instead of punishing them. Her voice was steady, passionate, clear. In the front row, Adrian watched with undisguised pride. He didn't try to share the spotlight or claim credit. He simply witnessed her triumph. When Bianca finished, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, Maria waited with tears streaming down her face. She held out a small box. Your grandmother's necklace, Maria said, fastening it around Bianca's neck. She wore it when she fled her country with nothing but hope. Then I wore it when I had you, not knowing if you'd survive. Now you wear it, having survived everything. The silver pendant was simple, a small tree with deep roots. Origin and resistance, Bianca whispered. Exactly. Oliver's book launched the same week. The Price of Truth, The Night Lab's Conspiracy, and the Woman Who Exposed It. Bianca had given him full authorization, trusting him to tell the story completely. It became an immediate bestseller. The Foundation's first major project was reviewing and correcting records for other victims of the genetic study. Bianca personally oversaw each case, ensuring families received accurate information, DNA testing, and counseling support. 17 families discovered their children had been switched. 17 families finally got truth. Adrian announced an expansion program, fellowships for early career researchers facing institutional pressure, legal support for whistleblowers, and a confidential reporting system for scientific misconduct. My mother would have built this if she'd lived, he said during the press conference. Bianca made sure her vision didn't die with her. Nina Brooks disappeared from public life entirely, her social media accounts deleted, her philanthropic boards requesting her resignation. Last anyone heard, she'd moved to Europe, trying to rebuild a reputation that would never fully recover. Graves, meanwhile, sat in federal prison, his appeals exhausted, his legacy destroyed. Occasionally, Bianca would receive letters from him, rambling justifications, attempts at manipulation, claims that history would vindicate him. She never read past the first line before discarding them. He'd taken enough of her time. One Sunday morning, Bianca asked Adrian to drive her somewhere. They pulled up to the Sunset Diner, now under new management but still serving the same terrible coffee. Why here? Adrian asked. Because this is where it started. She took his hand. Where your world crashed into mine. Where everything changed. They went inside, ordered coffee, sat in the same booth where he'd criticized everything and she'd defended it. I was such an ass, Adrian reflected. You were, but you got better. Thanks to you. Thanks to us choosing to be better. They sat in comfortable silence, watching rain begin to fall outside, gentle now, cleansing rather than threatening. As they left, Bianca paused at the door, looking back one last time at the place where truth had first revealed itself through a simple observation about a birthmark. Thank you, she whispered to the empty diner. Outside, rain fell softly on the city. Adrian pulled her close, and they walked without hurrying, without fear, letting the water wash over them. Still afraid of storms? He asked. Not anymore. She smiled up at him. Storms brought me you. They walked home through the rain, two people who'd survived darkness, chosen truth over comfort, and built something real from the wreckage of lies. Behind them, the Sunset Diner's neon sign flickered in the gray afternoon. Ahead, their future waited, honest, hard-won, and finally free. Maria was making tea when they returned, soaked and laughing. You two walked in the rain like teenagers, she scolded without heat. We earned it, Bianca said, kissing her mother's cheek. You did, mija. You absolutely did. The three of them sat together in the small apartment, mother, daughter, and the man who'd chosen to believe when believing cost him everything. The truth that had been suffocated for decades now lived freely in their story, in the foundation that bore their names, in the families who'd finally received answers, in the researchers who could work without fear. The truth lived, and so did they, finally at peace. The end. Thank you for following Bianca and Adrian's journey. Truth always finds its way to light. Sometimes it just needs someone brave enough to carry it there.